But what was the crime? You're not telling us. What is the crime that this individual
Was multiple murders, okay? Multiple murders.
So this individual was accused of multiple murders. Welcome to Gotham Investigations. I'm Jeff Giordano, and today we are doing an in-depth investigation into death penalty cases of mitigation. And we have with us today Ozzy Lopez. Ozzy Lopez is an expert death penalty mitigation specialist. You could also follow him on X. He is the creator of the channel Final Verdict. Tell us a little bit about your channel.
Well, Jeff, first of all, it's an absolute honor and pleasure to be here with you. I've watched all of your episodes yesterday, and I mean, it was just so much fun and interesting. I cannot believe the amount of experience that you have, so it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. You're having tremendous success, and I know that you will continue to have tremendous success with this podcast, with this episode. So guys, go like, follow, and subscribe.
Tell us a little bit about your channel, Ozzy.
Well, guys, it's called The Final Verdict on X. Basically, what I try to do is grab this complex issue of the death penalty and just provide a little bit of insight through my 20-plus years experience in just the field, right? Just as an observation. On Mondays, we highlight a Supreme Court case of cases that have gone all the way, right, through either exoneration or through execution. On Tuesdays, we try to give a little bit of education to potential jurors. You'd be surprised, and I know you know this, how little people want to take part in these types of cases. And that's crucial so that we can be able to better get a more diverse and inclusive jury pool of peers of these individuals. So that's basically what I try to do with the channel. So check it out on X, The Final Verdict.
So Ozzy is a private investigator, myself as well, and that puts us into the mitigation specialist category. But what people don't realize, when the final verdict comes in of guilty, the death penalty phase begins if they are up for the death penalty. And that's when a whole other investigation starts into mitigating circumstances. You want to explain to us some of the mitigating circumstances that we present in front of the jury on a death penalty case?
Guys, it's insanely incredible the type of information that we have to look into, and gather to be able to present this. So pretty much what mitigating circumstances are, it's just anything in the defendant's life, or part of the case, or anything in the defendant's life that will help a jury vote life rather than death. You know, it's a very, very complex issue, because what we're basically doing is we're saying, yeah, this guy did something that's that the state is going to show that is either heinous, atrocious, cruel. I mean, it's premeditated, calculated. But even those people deserve the fairness and justice of having their case investigated, having their case presented. And so we go and look at medical records. We try to define who this guy is. We look into family history. We go back generations to see what happened. You know, you wouldn't think so, but imagine growing up where your entire generation, you know, father after grandfather are in prison. You grow up in the low, poor income communities. You know, you grow up with mental illness. We go far back to where we even try to find out what was happening at birth and before it. You know, a lot of these individuals, not all of them, but a lot of these individuals come born into this world with mothers who are addicted to drugs and alcohol, and that causes something to an individual. It's not like a normal person growing up in a two-family loving home. And so we try to present these aspects as mitigating factors. As it comes to mitigation, anything and everything that has to do with the defendant's life is mitigation.
So how did you get the passion to get into this? Because obviously your passion was different than my passion coming out of the police world into the private sector.
Yeah, I took a little wrong turn somewhere, right turn somewhere. But what led me to this is pretty much since I was 16, when I was in 2002, when I first got introduced into this world was through an attorney. I actually started working for this attorney, just answering the phones a couple times a week. That led to a lot of other different aspects of what he was doing. And he was a death penalty private court appointed counsel. His name is Carl Mastel. And Carl Mastel was able to introduce me into this world just basically by answering the phones a couple times a week, and then later on teaching me about the different aspects so that I can help him in his law firm. That led into a long-time relationship between me and him that eventually led to me becoming a private investigator and getting appointed on these types of cases.
So where's your heart at in these cases? Why are you so intensely involved in these death penalty cases?
So what I really learned from Mr. Mastel and other attorneys like him doing the same type of work is, they always say, well, why are you defending these guys? Everybody, you should kill them, all of them. And that's not the right thinking. Our Constitution gives every single person, you, me, if you're accused of a crime, we get the opportunity to investigate our cases, to have justice or somebody fight for us on our behalf. And people got to look into not just, whether you did it or didn't do it. You have to look into whether the police did everything the right way. You got to look into the state attorney's office doing everything the right way? Are the judges doing everything the right way? And that aspect of us being able to have this freedom to have a defense be put on your behalf is what really captured me. It wasn't about innocent or guilty. It's always the little things. And what I found in the little things is that's where incredible things happen. That's where you learn the most, grow the most. And it's not just about, making sure that people are justly sentenced, but it's about educating the public of what's going on. Sometimes things don't go the right way, and the public should be aware of that, because things can't just always be the same.
So, Ozzy, as I mentioned, your passion is different than mine coming out of the police sector. So the Parkland school shooter, everybody was kind of devastated and outraged that he didn't get the death penalty. But the reason that I'm involved in death penalty mitigation is a little bit different. If a lot of these individuals, when they're not on death row, they have like 90 to 95% more chance of being murdered by another cellmate in the general population than on death row, where they eat together, they stay together, where they're actually like a celebrity. If you look at Jeffrey Dahmer and several other ones, they got killed in general population. That's partially, people look at it, the living conditions are so much better. Sometimes you have appeals that they get off death row, they get in general population, and they'll actually kill a prison guard, they'll kill another prisoner just to get back on death row because the living conditions are so much better. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, there's a major difference in the way that we have come about looking at these cases. And yes, some people believe that, death row inmates and people on death row are, have it easier, they're by themselves. But here's what people don't see too, is that there's a very few people that are like that are, like a Jeffrey Dahmer or somebody that wants to be segregated, secluded, or otherwise all hell will break loose. Those exist. But I've seen that the majority of the people on death row, think about this, guys. You're let out of a box 1 hour per week when you're on death row. You don't go to the yard with people. You're by yourself. And I don't know about you, but that would drive me crazy. We are people that are social in nature. And that doesn't go away because you committed a crime. And sometimes individuals face decades on death row waiting for appeal process, and when they come back, they get the death sentence waived or removed or remanded, or they go have a new trial, and then there's no more death sentence. And now you've taken a guy that's been secluded for decades, and then you put him in an environment where now has to be social or around a bunch of people. around a bunch of officers, and maybe that sometimes is what triggers all these, outbursts or recidivative crimes that happen in the prisons and in the jails.
So what are some of your tactics in breaking the barrier? When I went to see Mark Sievers in before his trial, they don't just trust you right away. You have to do several meetings in order to gain their trust. It's kind of like, seeing a fat lady in the park. You know she's human. You want to help her, but you just can't go up and offer her a diet plan. You have to gain her trust. What's your tactic in gaining trust when you go visit somebody on death row? Now, granted, there are a lot of attorneys that get attacked by regular prisoners. There are mitigation specialists, private investigators that get attacked when they go to jail to visit with these people. We don't just do video conferences because the face-to-face is so much more effective. How do you break that barrier where they finally trust you?
Yeah. First of all, it's not to go in there with like a judgmental heart. Not to go in there just thinking, hey, this person might attack me, might do something like that. I mean, like I said, first and foremost, we all deserve a defense. Everybody deserves to lay out their side of the story. Now, there's been many times where we're hearing their side of the story, and it's just like, it's in another dimension, and sometimes you may have to share with them what the other side is saying. There's always a discovery process. You always have a big team of attorneys who are very skilled and informative. So if done correctly, they've laid a foundation of trust, of acceptance, and of letting them know you have a team. And so when I go there, I go with that. Hey, I'm part of the team. This is your team. I'm here on your behalf. I'm appointed to help your case, find out. So you tell me, about your life, and you just communicate with them. You talk to them about them. Who are you? How can I help share that with someone else? And not just that, but getting into like the things that make us feel special usually come from past successes, right? So what makes me feel special is the ability of being able to communicate with others and have build a team and a relationship and be part of that team to be able to present something. So that to me has been, I've always done good in like spelling bees, or I've always done good in presentations. I've always been able to show a story or be able to present a story to others. So what we're doing is I just tell them, find out what their special need is, figure out that came from somewhere else. Like, I was really good at soccer when I was a kid, or I like to rollerblade. I had a client that he loved to rollerblade, and back when he was a little kid, he was part of a rollerblading rink, and he was actually gotten some certificates and awards. And so we were able to track down photographs of this person when he was doing what he most felt special about. And those genuine moments, you are able to present those to a jury so far better than.
So Ozzy, tell me about your first mitigation case. Everyone remembers their first case. What was the crime about, and who was the defendant in the case?
Guys, it was murders, multiple murders, 10-plus member gang case where everybody was arrested, multiple murderers, and I find myself here with Corey Smith, the head of that gang, led by the state attorneys.
What was the name of the gang?
The John Doe organization.
Funny you should say that. That happened in the city of Miami, and we're actually going to have the lead investigator on that case, Louis Diazle, on a future podcast show. So what kind of murders were they? Were they just shootings? Were they was this gang retaliation?
They were more witness elimination cases.
Witness elimination.
Yeah, people who were going to testify against him that were eventually eliminated.
So they actually accused this guy of murdering witnesses, and about how many witnesses or how many people did they allege he killed?
Various witnesses, but the three that are the most that come to mind are an individual that had recently told them that was going to kill him, and there was testimony by Corey Smith's girlfriend that basically, paraphrasing here, was him telling her, "I did it, baby. I did it, baby. I killed."
So basically, we're talking about a serial killer here. Pretty much.
a gang influencer, having other enforcers do his bidding. One of the witnesses that looked over the body said that her body looked like it was smoking like the barrel of a smoking gun. That's how big her holes were, and that's how much smoke was coming out of them.
So he got found guilty.
He was found guilty of first-degree murder for 3 different murders, and he was sentenced to death row.
And he was sentenced to death row. So as far as the mitigation in that case, that was a no-go. He's on death row now, or did he get any appeals?
No, so he did get appeals, and his case was brought back to be retried just on the penalty phase. And then his team, his new team, was able to do some crazy legal jiu-jitsu, and because of that, the death penalty was actually removed off the table, and his charges were actually reduced from first-degree murder to second.
People don't realize the insanity of being convicted on death row, being put on death row. You're talking about 2003. And when did that appeal go through? What year?
Oh, he just got his sentences retried and reworked.
And that's now in 2024. So sitting on death row all that time, better living conditions than the general population, tax dollars being spent. Obviously, there's no repercussions to him doing anything better in life inside of the jail system. But now he wins an appeal. He gets the first degree reduced to second degree murder off of death row. And is he life in prison at least without parole?
He's in life in prison without parole, 100%. But imagine also what it does to the victims' families. I mean, the victims' families are outraged. And the taxpayer funds that have to go into, like you said, not just his incarceration, but his defense.
Fast forward it to 2025, Ozzy. Are you afraid of any retaliation from these individuals that you actually lose and they get on death row?
No, I'm not. It's going to be hard to get out of prison.
But a lot of these people have just as much power in the prison system reaching the outside as they do when they are on the outside.
Guys, I have no fear. There's no fear of any repercussions at all. I do not. If that happens, we're very smart and we can handle ourselves. But the reality is that that's very difficult, and so for somebody to risk their lives because we tried to help them and then we didn't make the decision. It's a jury. That's why it's important to, let them know that they hear the decision made by somebody else. We try to just help present their story as best possible.
So there's been judges that's been murdered on verdicts that they take, and they put individuals in prison. How worried would you be for a jury member convicting an individual like this with connections on the outside that has a history of taking out all the witnesses?
Yeah, I mean, that didn't happen here. None of the juries were ever harmed, looked into, was there a threat or any of that. I think that, people really know where they stand when they're sitting in that box, when they're sitting on the defense side. When they're the defendant, they're looking at a jury and they're seeing kind of their life kind of flash before them as we present it, right? Do they get angry? Yeah, absolutely. Nobody wants to be sentenced to death row. I can guarantee that.
Well, there's been jurors that have been murdered before. Just because you haven't experienced it, there have been, just like there has been judges.
Yeah, I mean, there's planes crash all the time, right? That doesn't make this a fear of flying.
How comfortable would you be with a family member, say one of your kids, if they were old enough to be a juror, being on a juror for, say, the John Doe murders during the time of the trial? Because obviously this could lead in a mistrial if you have a juror that's going halfway through the trial and he just disappears or gets in a horrible accident.
That I'm so glad that you brought that up. I mean, that is by far the number one fear that any potential juror has about being on a death penalty jury. I can tell you that, yeah, that's a risk. Yes, absolutely. But I believe that our civic duty should outweigh those risks. Because you see, if only people that want to be on a death penalty jury get on death penalty juries, then we may have a skew as to more people getting executed and put on death row. It has to also include people that are so compassionate that they fear it. Yeah, it is a fear. And those are the jurors that we look for, because those individuals can take that fear and be able to observe and look at something objectively, and maybe with a little bit more compassion, because emotion, as fear is an emotion, will help us be able to maybe overcome a little bit of this bias, at least that I've seen in the diversity of a population, of a jury pool for death penalty cases.
So if you're out there and you see somebody convicted of murder and they don't get the death penalty, know the facts. Know what's behind it. Know that their odds of getting murdered before their death sentence actually go through are 90 to 95% better that they will get stabbed or attacked by another inmate in general population than waiting for the state of Florida or Texas or wherever they might be accused of death and waiting for their death penalty on taxpayers' dollars. This is Gotham Investigations. Subscribe to The Final Verdict on X. Buy a copy of our book, The Mitigation of Mark Sievers, Till Death Do Us Part, available on Amazon Books. I'm Jeff Giordano. We'll see you at Gotham.